indie game garden.
Matt Pfister is an indie game developer based in Boston, Massachusetts. He goes by the tag Freezebeam and is known for creating surreal bitscapes across genres and modes of play in his games. I'm a particular fan of his shmups, Unseelie Chorus, and Escape Wizard. His most recent game, Towerbound, is perhaps the most clever take on tower defense I've seen to date, featuring small tweaks to the tried and true formula that change the entire flow of the genre in a way that feels fresh. Today we are celebrating the release of his peaceful city builder. It's called Realmfold, and we're also just celebrating him being on the show because it's a wonderful conversation with a wonderful human. Let's get to it. Matt, thank you so much for being here. To start, I would love to hear more about your history with games. Talk me through the interactive experiences that first inspired you, and what made you decide to start making games yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me, first of all. It's really cool that you're doing this. I think this is something where there's so little out there in terms of discovery right now for talking to game creators and stuff that it's really cool to see and listen to your podcast. So yeah thanks so much. So yeah, in terms of early experiences for playing games, I was definitely a Nintendo kid. So I got a hand-me-down NES when I was like 4 or something from my cousin. And this was like 1988 or around there. So it was like right in the heyday of like, oh man, there are so many cool games. And I thought like Nintendo was the coolest thing in the world. I eventually got like a Super Nintendo and kind of grew up through all the console generations and all that. And then at some point in the 90s, my parents got a PC. And then I kind of started to learn the world of like shareware and like freeware games. Like you buy a CD with like 150 games on it. And that blew my mind. There were so many like weird, broken, strange games that existed. And I just wanted to play them all. So that was so cool. And also, when I was like an early teenager, I don't even know how I got it, but I got a copy of Click and Play, which was like an early like game making thing. And I would make games for my friends and my brother, and like just like they were terrible or just like clones of like breakout clones and stuff. But I was having so much fun, like just playing around with this and like putting my own like drawings in it and like whatever you could do, I would do. So that was like early experience. And I kind of stuck with making games since then. So in college, I was like an electrical and computer engineering major, which is useless to me these days because I haven't like engineered anything with electricity, and I'd be terrified. I ended up, I'm just basically a web developer at this point. But I got to take like computer science classes kind of as a minor. So I took like a game programming and a graphics class in college. So that was super helpful. And then like once I graduated, I was one of those people who like wants to always do things the hard way or something. So I was like, oh, I'm going to make my own engines and stuff. Like I'm going to make my games, but I'm making an engine while I make the game. And then just proceeded to not finish anything for like 10 years. That's not really true. I had a few like small releases, but like it's so hard to get them to run because like I did everything myself that I don't even have them up anywhere anymore. And then like most recently, like around 2024, I got laid off from my job, which was like kind of a blessing because I'd been doing, pretty much in the corporate world since I graduated college. And I was like, oh, this is my chance. I'm going to like make some games. And like I learned Godot at that point. And was like, okay, this is great. I can like actually get a game like out there. People can engage with it. So that's kind of my more like recent cycle of making games.
Cool. Yeah, you mentioned putting like some of your drawings in Click and Play when you were little, and I noticed the easel behind you. Are you kind of a visual artist as well on the side?
I never felt like it. So like it was like kind of a pandemic hobby for me. I kind of learned to, it was like, oh, I should like try something new. So like I tried learning to paint, and I've been painting like since then, but not as much recently. But yeah, painting's fun and like totally not a skill I thought I'd be able to do. But it's like something like when you start out, you're really bad at it, but you get good fast because you're so bad at it. That's really like enjoyable.
Cool. Yeah, and I like how that factors into kind of the ethos of, at least, compiling the experiences of a lot of guests I've talked to, is like it's very similar to game design in a way where it's like you can, or making a game in something like Godot, where you start out and you're like, what the hell is this? And then very quickly, especially if you have pre-existing skills in coding, you can kind of get spun up. But that's awesome. Do you what were some of, like, I guess some of the games that fascinated you in particular, like those early games on NES, SNES? Like what were
Oh
the
yeah.
foundations for your nostalgia?
Sure. Yeah. So the ones that like pulled me in a lot were like um Metroid, from like presenting like you're in this world. The world's like really strange. There are all kinds of
Yeah.
cool like creature designs and stuff, and like weird music. I found that really fascinating. Um the Castlevania games kind of had that mystery about them too, like
Yeah.
especially Castlevania 2, where it's like this is a strange game that, I'm 6 years old. I can't understand this. Like
Yeah.
what, like I have to go here and like kneel here to like figure out how to get into a castle. Like I'll never figure this out. But that like idea of it like hinting at a world that's like bigger than what is presented to you was so cool to me. Um and I was just thinking about like Millen's Secret Castle was another one where it's like, this is like unplayable. Like it doesn't teach you how to play it at all, but like it feels like, oh, this is like a game that just is a mystery. Like, what is this even?
Yeah. Sweet. I love it. And getting into now your kind of your game design philosophy. One of my favorite things about perusing your itch page is like the breadth of joy that's on display and the genres that you've chosen to dabble in. There's like shmups. There are pandemonium. There's puzzle game and pandemonium gems. There's a interdimensional jet ski simulator, which is kind of an early attempt at a water racer. There's Evoplasm, which is similar to FTL. And then there's Towerbound, a tower defense game with some very clever building mechanics. And now Realmfold, which is a tile placing game inspired by peaceful building games. And I was wondering, like, why do you choose to design in such vastly different genres? At least with the offerings on display, it's kind of like one genre, you covered it, move on to the next. What's kind of the impetus there?
Yeah, so I think a couple things kind of pull me towards making a game. So I think there's like one set of games where I'm interested in exploring like either a technical challenge or a specific like experience. And then there are other sets of games where I feel like, oh, this is like a really good idea where it's like, I feel like could actually make a good game that people would want to play.
Mm,
So I'd split them that way. So like a good example of a more like technically oriented game is the jet ski simulator. Was basically I wanted to see if I could make like infinitely real time procedurally generating like terrain on
mm,
a web export of Godot. Um, so like that's really what motivated me to do that. It wasn't really like this is a game like I want to play
yeah,
necessarily. Is like I want to do this like one specific thing and then like I'll build a game around it. Um, and then yeah, the other set of games I would say are usually about ideas. And usually for me, those ideas are about other existing games I played where I want to like tweak something or like adjust something. So a good example of that would be like Escape Wizard, right? So like
hmm,
Escape Wizard is kind of a combination of a bunch of different ideas I was having. I had just been playing a bunch of Vampire Survivors. I thought it was great. But like, what if Vampire Survivors was like a retro arcade game? Like, what would that look like? And so, yeah, it was kind of like, let's combine those things and explore that. And then like generally, I'm a big like roguelite slash roguelike person.
yeah,
And so those are kind of like my bread and butter, I would say, of like what kind of games I want to play. So I tend to make a bunch of those.
that's sick. Yeah, um, I feel like the love for not only the experimentation with genre, but the experimentation with like the technical, I guess, capabilities or things going on in each kind of iteration is very cool to see because something that was more of a can this work, like the jet ski simulator, versus something like how can I iterate on this idea that I love. I think it encapsulates a lot of the like joy and whimsy that I love to see in a creator's catalog, because it like really speaks to what I think is most important when it comes to keeping up the hobby or the craft in something like game design or creating games, where it's so hard to make it commercially these days. It's like you have to be actually interested in what's like going on and what you're making. It can't just be like working toward an end goal, because that can get so soul sucking so fast.
Yeah, totally.
Another thing I love seeing about kind of your progression as a designer, is how, even though the genres are so vastly different, the design sensibility as far as like their aesthetics are so similar, where, 3D, 2D, what have you, most of them have this like neo-Gothic kind of baked CRT TV aesthetic. And playing them one after the other as I was preparing for this interview, it almost makes me think like I've been trapped inside like my grandmother's television, is how I wrote it down. So I was wondering, like, what draws you to this art style? Why did you decide to like diverge from it for, the one time I saw you diverge from it, as far as your itch catalog and Evoplasm? What's the story there?
Yeah, so when I did Evoplasm, and Evoplasm, if people haven't played it, it's a game about like building little microorganism creatures, and they fight and stuff. And I wanted that to be like cute and kind of shiny and look like something that would be like tactile and people would want to play with, like clay or blocks or something.
Right.
And I found that the art style for that game was actually really hard to maintain. Especially like I'm not a great or even good 3D artist, so I rely a lot on like Creative Commons models and stuff. And like maintaining this feel of like, oh, it's kind of like a toy you would play with across these like disparate art models was really slowing me down. So like beyond that, I was like, okay, like I need to find a style that first off, like I don't think like playing with toys is like creatively like speaks to me necessarily. Like that's not really the kind of games I tend to engage with. So I was like, let me push on something that's a little easier to consistently deliver, which is like this, like, yeah, like exactly what you said, like a baked CRT or like kind of retro-y, but like 3D kind of graphics.
Yeah.
And I found it just so much easier to like consistently produce that if I'm working with a bunch of disparate sources, or if I'm drawing, like I don't think I'm a great pixel artist. I think I'm okay, but I can like at least like slap a CRT filter on it and it at least looks all pretty consistent to me. So that was kind of the impetus for like shifting to that aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I like working in it too. Like it's more fun for me. Like those kind of games are more interesting to me and pull me in. And I think it's like a trend too. So there are so many games on itch that are sort of following that aesthetic that it's worth following myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And one of the things we kind of chatted about a little bit in lead up to this interview is how, your expectations for the games, or like how you view sharing them, has evolved during the time you've been, making games, as far as like, is this going to be a free release? Is this going to be commercial? Is it going to be somewhere in between? I would love to hear more about your thoughts just regarding like what you told me when we were chatting. Basically was like, when it feels right, I'll have it be a commercial thing. But otherwise, like I just am content making stuff. And I was wondering if you could speak more to that, because it's been fascinating me, particularly recently, just as like a thought cycle of like how expectations on the part of the creator can very much define like the success of a creation or like the joy inherent in it. And so I was wondering if you could walk me through like maybe what feeling right you perceive what that might feel like for a commercial release, or why, you know, some of the titles you released on itch haven't progressed to that point. Just your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think some of it is like I'm a solo dev and I have a full-time job. So like putting a game out on Steam exposes you very quickly to the non-fun parts of game making, which
Right.
is for me like delivering 12 different capsule arts in different sizes, or figuring out like a strategy for contacting streamers, or like things like that, or like, well, this is just work. Like, I don't know. This
Yeah.
is not fun. At least for me. I know some people probably enjoy all of that part of it. So like, I think like in terms of getting something out there commercially, it also would have to be something like I'm extremely happy about. And so like Evoplasm was like kind of headed in that direction. I got the demo up on Steam. I was really excited to share it. I'd gotten it into like the roguelike celebration in
Mm-hmm.
2024 festival on Steam, which was cool. And I put it out there and it did okay. Like, meh. No one's like it's not blowing up. It's not like taking off. No one's really complaining about it too much. Like, it just kind of is.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I have my thoughts on why that's the case. Like, I think there's like a little bit of a mismatch between like what the market wants and what the game is and how it presents itself. And it's like, well, it's out there. We kind of did our experiment, see what happens. Yeah, so I think like, to answer your broader question, I think like pushing something commercially, like you really want to put your whole body into it. So make sure you don't hurt yourself in doing that.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. And it's hard because you see nowadays, I feel like in particular with folks who are, you know, working really, really hard on games, they're usually going commercial, but then there are a few that don't, and they're like, this is free, like try it if you want. And then everyone's like, can I pay you for it? Like, please, like this is so much work. And there's a lot, like it almost reminds me of like people who have the resources to like do a free internship are like getting ahead of the people who, you know, need to be paid for their work, which is more ethical. And I don't know, like what are your thoughts on that strain, because it does seem so complicated and multi-layered.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, there are so many great games that have started as free or like effectively free. Like, even like something like Dwarf Fortress, which I think, maybe like 10 years ago, I would think would never, or maybe even longer now, would never be a commercial success, has
Right.
proven to be a massive commercial success. That I think there's something to absolutely like building an audience with free games before you make a commercial game. Like,
Yeah.
no one, Steam will not promote your game on its merits. Like, you will
Yeah.
promote your game and Steam will pour gasoline on it if it catches on. Like,
Right.
so like building anything you can do to build an audience prior to trying to do something commercially, at least if your game just doesn't like pull people in immediately, will
Right.
help you, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction too, as far as like um, being realistic about how, you know, in any kind of self-made creative art these days, even if from a perception or outside observer perspective, it's like, wow, this popped off like overnight. A lot of the time, there's years and years of building going into that like overnight success, which is so important to remember in this arena in particular, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, Moving on to another one of your games, Pandemonium Gems. It's inspired by one of my favorite puzzle games on the internet, Domino Grove, a free puzzle game made by another previous guest on this show, Ezra Zanton. And thinking about kind of the direct inspiration there, which you list on your itch page, for two great puzzle games in their own right. I was wondering like how you view community in indie game development. Is its impact for you mainly seen in like this kind of inspirational play experience, like one game inspiring another, or does it go any deeper? Like, are you having conversations with other indie devs, inspiring one another in that sense? What's up with that?
Yeah, sure. So, community and game development is super important for me. So, I'm lucky enough to be in the Boston area. The Boston game dev community is incredibly active, which is like amazing. And it's been active since like I started going to events with them like in like 2007 ish. And it's like still like going strong, which is
That's
like
so
mind
cool.
blowing to me despite like all the shifts, especially like in Boston, where a lot of like the bigger companies that were here, like bigger studios, have kind of fallen apart or dismantled or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see this community of game developers in this area. So I'll do like demo nights with them and go to lightning talks and stuff. The demo nights in particular are so helpful for getting like playtesting feedback, like
Yeah.
real, like observed, like in person feedback is just like so useful just for like watching someone play your game, even if like, oh, like this person's not really saying anything, but I can tell they're like super engaged and I can tell what they're doing, or like, hey, they can't figure out that there's a button here, like something really boring. Like, hey,
Right.
maybe I need to highlight that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so from that group, I learned about a different group called Tiny Mass Games. So Tiny Mass Games is like a collective of game developers that's super loose. So people kind of come and go. The idea is we make games and release them every quarter. So like
Cool.
4 times a year, which is hard, but cool and about the right time length. I feel like to do something and like have it be like digestible by players and like it has like a beginning, you can win it. Like, you know, it's a game like game, at least for me, that's about the right time frame to get there. So I learned about, I think it was the season of Tiny Mass Games where I released Escape Wizard and Ezra and friends had released Domino Grove. And then the next season of Tiny Mass Games, we were doing a weird challenge where we were going to make games that were like 16 pixels horizontal by 9 vertically.
Oh,
And so I was
cool.
like drawing out ideas, like kind of in like a sprite, like just kind of like mocking up, like, what could this even look like? This is so restrictive. And because Domino Grove was like in my head at that point, I was like, oh, like what if I made a game like that, but instead of like Domino Grove, you kind of fill your board and then you get kind of scored based on how well you did it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, like what if you have some bombs that like free up space while you do that? And so instead of just kind of placing things perfectly, it's kind of like you could play forever if you're good enough. Like,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like this battle of like space versus like entropy kind of while you play it. So yeah, that one was pretty much directly influenced by Domino Grove, and I love Domino Grove too. It's such a good design. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
That's beautiful. And I feel like there is another layer of community I've noticed just kind of baked into the way that you discuss approaching game design, as far as like, I've really been enjoying this. And what about this? You know, as far as like iterating directly on just adding a, you know, mechanic here or taking away something there and seeing how, you know, I don't think the fallout functions is like a good way to describe it, but it is in a way. It's like seeing the consequences of adding or subtracting just one or a few things is one of the things I love about playing your games. And I think that leads me directly into my next little chunk here, which is about Towerbound, which you've mentioned in this interview. It's a game that's billed as kind of a tower defense game, but really it's like the second half of the name, as far as like Towerbound bound, that really functions as far as like making it unique, because your character is like bound to a platform upon which they can build defenses to stave off an onslaught of enemies, which, you know, is pretty common kind of tower defense loop there. But it's one of many tweaks in the realm that we've just discussed, that you've made to kind of the classic tower defense formula, that I think is really smart. Another one of the best additions is kind of the different apparatuses and cards that you pick up to create different defenses throughout the game are only facing certain directions. So you have to balance like what weapons or tools you pick with what direction they're facing, with how, you know, you can build your structure on this one little platform. So I would love to hear, with all of that preamble aside, I'd love to hear more about the development of Towerbound. How does it represent your stated purpose? As far as trying to make the perfect video game, which I saw on your itch, and Blue Sky, which I know is somewhat sardonic, but I'm sure it's also related to this process of iteration we've been talking about.
Yeah, sure. So I think I wrote that because I felt like the itch page needed like a line of text on it, and I wasn't sure what to put there. But it felt like a good enough mission statement, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
if I could make the perfect video game, well, then all my problems would be solved. Of course,
that'd be great. Yeah.
So Towerbound, I think, is expressing an idea which is, I feel like, is in a couple of my games, and something I'm really interested in, which is like, hey, it's like a roguelike game, but the build you make needs to be like physically inhabited. So you're building a thing that is both offensive and defensive in nature. So you have to like build something that can be extended on, that like protects its weak points, but also like achieves whatever goal you need to overcome. Um, so yeah, I think it's probably the design I'm most proud of, and the most I feel like has commercial legs at this point, which maybe will make it to Steam someday. Um, and I'm not sure exactly what inspired it, but I think there were a bunch of like side scroller flash games kind of in that era, where it's like, oh, like these are cool ideas. They don't seem to exist much today. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
they're out there, but like that sort of like side on view tower defense game is cool. I think it can work well with like a roguelike build kind of discovery, like roguelike deck builder kind of thing. And then at some point, I played Nine Kings, which is like really a genius design. And they solved the problem of like, okay, well, if you build like a tower defense game, a lot of the time you're just sitting there, but like
Yeah.
you need, like, that's boring. So like give the player something to do. So like in Towerbound, you get to control a little wizard, which, shoots magic or whatever. And you get to like focus on aiming while you kind of wait for the tower defense wave to play out. So that was one of the things that helped to kind of propel it a little past Evoplasm in my mind, whereas like these are kind of the same or similar ideas. You're both building something and it's a roguelike. But they're kind of, I would say like Towerbound's pretty much an evolution beyond that.
Yeah. I guess one of in kind of honing in on the verbiage you used in that answer, just philosophically, I guess I was wondering, like, do you view game design, and in particular iteration on game design, as like a series of, I guess, problems to be solved or working toward this? And I guess it is related to trying to make the perfect video game in a way. Do you view it as kind of like working toward an experience of flow, or maybe what you experience when you're playing some of your favorite games? Or how do you view that kind of like problem solving idea of like, well, most tower defense games, this is bad about them, and then one game solves that, and then the rest of the tower defense community is like, okay, how can I build on that? Like, what are your thoughts philosophically in that realm?
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the first part. Like that flow state is what I'm seeking when I play games, for
Yeah.
sure. So if I can build something that keeps people in that state, like I feel like it's working.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you see someone play your game and they are in that state. It's kind of like, whoa, I don't know, it like worked on them. Like it definitely feels like that to me. And when someone's like confused or hesitant or lost, then I feel like, oh, this needs some work. Like, and like obviously like not every game's for everybody, but you can kind of get a sense like, hey, this thing just doesn't work on half the people, period. Like that doesn't feel great. Or
Yeah.
like this works on most people, or people are into it but not super into it, or like, so there's definitely like a sense of iteration there, and that's where I think like direct play testing is so like critical.
Yeah, you've talked about, even just in this interview, how helpful it is to like look over someone's shoulder while they're playing your game. is the flow or joy that someone gets out of something you've made ever like surprising? Like one of the things I loved hearing about from another developer I interviewed recently was how they were just doing like a game jam and they saw like YouTubers uploading playthroughs, and like this moment that they had just designed like any other moment was like really like making people's like kind of taking their breath away. And he knew then to like do more of that in future iterations. And I was wondering, like, are those moments ever surprising and inspiring in themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was doing a demo night with Realmfold recently, and like it pulled someone in and they played like 20 minutes straight, like heads down, which is like incredible. Like I just let them go. Like they were just like totally happy. I was like,
That's
this
so
is
cool.
this is strange, and I've never had someone like just totally like zone in on it, which was neat. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That's always wonderful to hear that even in something that I think most game developers reach a point where with whatever project they're working on of any size where they're like, I've looked at this thousands and thousands of times and I'm kind of like pulled out of it in a way.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's always cool to hear in the human experience when like even something you feel like you've looked at for an eternity has new feelings and new joys for people coming in and playing it for the first time. Speaking of Realmfold, I would love to hear more about this very recent new release. Congratulations. It's kind of a peaceful building game, which, similar to Towerbound in this way, tweaks the established formula of that genre to make it feel fresh and challenging while still familiar enough for fans to feel at home. Um, Tell me more about it. And
Yeah.
no strongly worded question here. I'd just love to hear more.
Yeah, so Realmfold, I love Dorf Romantic. Dorf Romantic's probably one of my top 10 games of all time.
Yeah.
I think it's like perfect. I was thinking about what sort of like variations you could put on it. So the idea behind Realmfold is, unlike Dwarf Romantic, instead of just like one stack of tiles, you have two stacks. One of the stacks is just normal terrain tiles with like 3 different kinds of terrains on them, and the other kind has ley lines on it. So you have to build these like ley lines throughout space, and then you can only place terrain tiles kind of adjacent to that. So like in Dwarf Romantic terms, it would be like, hey, you can play this like normal, except you have to always build like near a train track effectively. So it's a different kind of constraint system than Dwarf Romantic has, and so it plays in a very different way, but it still kind of captures that same feeling of like, oh, I did perfectly, like, oh, this is like my mushroom forest, like it's growing really well, like it's almost perfect, like those kind of feelings still exist there, but you kind of have a different constraint and different things to think about while you play it.
Yeah.
And then it also is layering in sort of a small progression system, so you can like make different builds that influence how it plays when you're playing it, and you can kind of theorize like, oh, this will be like really great, I'll be able to build better if I choose this perk over this perk, things like that.
I love it. Yeah. And I'm excited to dig more into it after this interview. The inspiration you mentioned and one of your favorite games, Dwarf Romantic, has obviously a video game implementation and also a board game implementation. And as someone who obviously thinks a lot about games and I guess the different permutations they can be in, but also how like modes of play affect how an audience interacts with something, I was wondering, like, what are your thoughts on video games versus board games? Do you enjoy both? Have you like tried designing for a board game ever? And what are like, what do you think the genres can like take from one another, I suppose, if anything?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I do like board games a lot. I feel like I'm more of a video game player than a board game player, although like I probably should play more board games. Um, I think board games, like in the sort of like modern trend, are so smartly designed and require like really intense design constraints that I think make them. It's interesting to see Dwarf Romantic go from a video game to a board game because it feels like it might have been a board game first, even though
Right.
like that's not the case. Um, but like something like another game that's like usually inspiring to me is like Into the Breach, which feels like it
Yeah.
could have been a board game. Like if you could figure out, like, I don't know, I probably need like a rule book the size of like Gloomhaven or something to like
Totally.
actually figure it out. But like just having like a design that people can understand when they're sitting at a table and like playing with friends and like not be overwhelmed with components and rules. I think like board game designers are really advanced in terms of like making games that work for people.
Yeah, because in a way, it's like it's easier to confirm a vision when you're designing a video game because you're making the constraints in real time, and like there's no like a player can't just be like, well, we'll forget this rule or we'll work around this. Whereas in a board game, you're putting trust in the players to interpret the vision through words. So in that way, I like thinking about like board game players as, you know, being the game engines or like the human brain as a computer, which is always interesting for me to think about, and definitely a rabbit hole. Um, Speaking of game design, do you envision an audience when you're designing your games? Or do you make them mainly for yourself to fulfill a creative drive within you or a curiosity about, you know, tweaking these mechanics as we've talked about?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's definitely more of like a creative drive thing. So like sometimes it's I want something to like look a certain way, or it's like a technical challenge, or just explore a genre. Like I don't know that I have an audience in mind, although I think it's like super important to do that, especially if you're making something commercial. Like
Mm-hmm.
you probably should be really figuring out like who wants to play this and like making sure that it matches what they would expect.
Yeah.
So I think for me, like generally, no, I don't have an audience in mind, but like maybe I should.
Well, that might be the type of thing where when the audience in mind more naturally kind of coincides with your interest in a project, maybe that's when the commercial game will feel right, potentially.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
if you could give some advice to an aspiring game designer, what would it be?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things. I would say first off, like play lots and lots of games and keep track of what works for you. Like there are so many, like making a game is a hard process and like people have solved lots of problems before you. So like make sure
Yeah.
that you have like a big toolbox of different ideas that you can use in case you get stuck. I would also say like make small games. I think that's like it's kind of like if you make too small of a game, you might bore yourself. So like make it manageable and like make it interesting for yourself, but like keep it small because you will absolutely fail a lot of times before you finish a game. And then, yeah, I think like if you do want to make something commercially, like think about marketing early. And I don't mean like advertising, I guess. I mean like finding like this is a game that players want to engage with. And
Mm,
so figure out what that hook is for people. I think
yeah.
a cool game that did it for me recently is like Sol Sesto, which like
Yeah.
it's
I've been
such
playing
a
that too.
yeah, it's such like a compelling art style. Like I want to play this
Totally.
game. I don't even like you wouldn't have to show me the gameplay. Like whatever this is, I want to experience it.
Yeah.
And like I think that's the perfect like marketing. Like your game is like so cool looking that even if no one knows what it is, like they want to play it.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like Sol Sesto in particular is a really good example of, I think, what an indie game can be, where it's like, I would say almost like 85% of the like intrigue or me wanting to go back is to like see more of the art as I unlock
Yeah.
stuff. And the game is almost like, it's fun, but it's like so simple and it's so connected to these very classic like roguelike progressions that we're familiar with as both fans of roguelikes. And I think that's a great example of like a unique game that finds its players through this, you know, spiky aspect that makes it different than, you know, the thousands of other offerings. Curious when you mention like keeping track of what works for you. Do you have a way that you do this? Is it like in a phone note or a journal, or just, you know, keeping a mental tabs on what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm a big this is like boring note-taking app talk, but like I'm a big Obsidian user, which is like a
Okay.
note-taking app, and I use it for pretty much everything. So I tend to jot things down in there. Um, I usually like have a couple of pages for like different game ideas that I might pursue at some point, and then like I'll add like influences to it. So I like kind of have like a mind map of like different games I played, like how they might influence this game I might want to make someday, and kind of just build on it. So that's kind of my technique.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'll include Obsidian in the show notes. It's something I've never known about, but just like doing a quick search, I can actually see, it's almost like I'm seeing a little representation of your brain in a way where like I can see the notes taking place where you're like Vampire Survivors and then another note over here. What about this? It's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, and it's good for all sorts of things. Just keeping track of anything. I mean, everyone kind of has their note taking system or like whatever. So, but that's one that works for me.
Yeah. And I feel like it's something that I think a lot of particularly like starting out creatives or aspiring creatives are trying to nail down and figure out or in search of, as far as a way to store kind of a compendium of thoughts on any subject or topic that interests them. And I feel like it's an underrated part of what I find very productive creatives have in common, as far as like, well, I have a day planner or I have this notes app that like everything goes in there, and then I can stay organized in that way. And it's amazing how you don't have to be the most organized person to, you know, find success or what have you, but it's amazing how I think much it can be an advantage to finishing projects or bringing things to completion. So I think it's an underrated facet. Thank you for sharing that. Similarly, if I gave you kind of a megaphone or a way to reach people who are purely playing games, but not, you know, having an interest in designing them, what do you wish they could know about like peeking behind the curtain and thinking of the developers whose art they consume?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for me, it absolutely makes my day like when I hear from a player. So I would definitely encourage players to reach out to developers and like share their thoughts. I like it, even if it's just like a note, like, "Hey, I like this part. You should do this." Like, even though like sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed, like, "Oh, I have like 10 players who want like 10 different things out of my game."
Right.
It's just nice to know that someone's engaging with it in that way, and it like people's ideas have definitely shaped the games I've made. Just hearing feedback from people. So like, I think it's just it'll make a creator's day if you reach out to them.
Hell yeah. I think that's a beautiful message. And I think it's awesome for my listeners to maybe Google Obsidian and be like, oh, like my note is going right into right
Yeah,
into
totally.
Matt's Obsidian kind of workflow. But also, I think that's a really important message just for this show and this context, not only as far as like wanting to kind of break through internet apathy was like my tagline, my make a perfect game, because I think in today's world, when we create something and online is kind of the arena where we put it, it can all too often, I think, feel like screaming into a void, or like what's going on. Like there's billions of games on itch and no one's playing mine. And
or playing them and not leaving a comment, which
exactly,
is like, I know
yeah,
like 1,000 people played this thing. Like I have 3 comments. Thank
right,
you. Like,
right. And it's also like, it's been kind of the thesis behind my experience of making this show is like, it's incredible to me that all of these folks whose games I enjoy, I just, you know, send them a Blue Sky message or an email and they're like, hell yeah, I'd love to talk about it. Like it really is it opens my eyes and it also fills me with joy and hope, where before it might have been more of a one-sided experience that like is fun, but then I, step away from my computer and it feels, lonely again or what have you. Like there's so many people willing to engage. So very important message. And then one last question for you here, Matt. We've talked about a lot of influences throughout this interview, which I love doing. One of the things that my partner Jamie is always asking me to do when we talk games is like, stop saying this game is like this game and tell me what actually this game is about. But what would you say your biggest influences are in game design? Feel free to list specific titles, specific designers, also very interesting to me and my audience. So anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
Sure. I think one developer that I think doesn't miss is Subset Games. So FTL and Into the Breach are huge for me. I think they're really different games and tickle my brain in different ways, but they're both games like I come back to a lot, both from like, hey, I want to play like a really fun game, and like I wanted to check out, because they solve like really wild problems in both of those games that I think are really useful to look at as a game developer. And then some other ones that are also mechanically interesting to me are like the Rift Wizard games by Dylan White, and Paths of Acra by Ulfsire. And both of those games let players make kind of wild builds that feel like you're really creative when you're playing them. And I think that's really cool that they let you do that as a player. And they're also like games with very constrained UIs as well. So it's kind of cool to see them fit so much game into like a really tight space. And then like from an aesthetic perspective, I think Animal Well by Billy Basso is like a mind-blowing achievement in pixel art, where it's like it transcends pixel art in a lot of ways, I feel like. And then there are some weird pinball video games called Demon's Tilt and Xeno Tilt, which are by
Never heard of those.
Developer. Yeah, they're by a developer named Wizenwar, or goes by Wizenwar. And they're like, it feels like you're playing like a video game of pinball, like from another dimension. Like it's so juiced. And that kind of influenced like, I don't think I achieved it or close to it, but like Escape Wizards aesthetics were kind of inspired by that.
Oh, very cool. Some great recommendations in there, and I'll put all those in the show notes below. Of course, checking out Matt's games, which I encourage everyone to do for all the reasons I've listed in this interview and more. Matt, thank you so much for being here. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I hope you've gotten at least something out of it. I know I've gotten more things than I can count out of it, and I just wanted to thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was great.
And that was Matt, Mr. Freezebeam himself. What a thoughtful, engaging, and just overall clever person. It was really cool to talk to him. He had his easel in the background in his little studio office, and I thought it was poetic because I feel like he does represent for me what I want artists to be here in 2026, engaging with all of the technology and cool things we can create with it, while staying true to the roots of what kind of makes us creative people and creative humans, and just humans in general, which is kind of making things feel tangible and making things feel beautiful when we're inspired to do so. And Matt definitely does that. So wanted to thank him for being on, thank him for all his tweaks, for introducing me to the Obsidian note-taking platform, which is exciting. Looking forward to maybe organizing my life a bit more using that tool or a similar one. And yeah, I encourage you all to check out his games, which I will put front and center in the show notes below my little spiel there, and also all the games and things and cute, I don't know, pieces of art that we talked about today. I'll be putting all of it down in the show notes as well. So do head there, do click the links, and support the folks that make this show beautiful, which is certainly not me. It's the people who come on, the guests, and yeah, I'd be grateful if you did that. So thank you. As far as my journey with games goes, I've been loving games recently, thinking about them more, writing about them more. I had a piece come out in Nintendo Life in May, Sunday, May 2nd. So when you're listening to this, it'll be over a month old, but do check it out. It's a kind of evergreen piece about retro game stores in Madrid, which I loved writing. My editor over there, Gavin Lane, is a awesome person, and I learned that he actually lives in Spain when I was writing that article. So shout out Gavin. Great guy. I feel like I make him uncomfortable with my praise all too often. I'm saying like, you're awesome, you're great. And he's like, haha, laughing it off. So yeah, he's an awesome person. And I feel like it's unique to find that in games journalism, or the little scrap that we have left here again in 2026. So go over and read that if you're interested in retro game stores in Europe. Additionally, as far as the games that I'm playing, one of the games I know I've shouted out on this show before, and potentially the other podcast I do about games called Game Joy with my partner Jamie, is Scarlet Hollow. I haven't been playing it as much recently, but I realized I left it out of my little recap on all the games I played when I was on vacation, and which is wild because it was the game I played the most, and it inspired me to make my own little twine game with multiple endings, because it showed me just the breadth that even something like a visual novel can have as far as its gameplay and the joy it can bring. So do check out Scarlet Hollow. It wasn't made in Twine. It was made in Ren'Py, which is a similar tool, but very cool. The Twine game that I made is called Harley and Bleak. It's on itch.io at Darth Malks, which is kind of my username on there. So if you want to check it out, that's awesome. Harley, Harley, ampersand Bleak. I'll put the link in the show notes as well if you want to check it out. But it's a very novice attempt, I will say. Probably doesn't hang together. Writing's probably crap, but I made it. And I made collages using Photoshop. And it taught me a lot about, I'll probably say this a lot on this podcast and the other one over time, but it taught me a lot about not just making a game and kind of a microcosm, but also shipping a game and kind of all the commercial woes and crappiness that can go into that, whether it's like what Matt talked about, where you're making 12 different capsule art pictures all at different resolutions, or trying to put everything into an executable file that makes sense and runs on different machines, or all that stuff. It just can be a real headache. And so I would say more than making a piece of art that I'm proud of, even more than that, the experience of shipping, in heavy air quotes, my little Twine game, it showed me that it was kind of an empathy machine for me, where it's like I'm talking to game devs, I'm engaging with their work every day, but it showed me even more just how much goes into creating the pieces of art that we love. Particularly these pieces of art that are getting some engagement, but maybe not a ton. And I'm just here to say that thank you for putting out the games that you do, folks, and keep doing it. And that's why the message that Matt delivered in his megaphone to people who want to peek behind the curtain at the developers that make their favorite games is so important, where it's like, leave a comment. Send them a message, say what you enjoy, even what you don't enjoy, but that you've been playing and you like the product overall. It can be, it can really be fuel. And in that way, we can transform all of our machines, whether they're laptops, phones, what have you, into empathy machines themselves. In addition, I've been picking away at Titanium Court. I feel like I get it. to a degree. AP Thompson's a clever guy and designed an awesome game. It's not that addicting to me, but I do think I'll go back and pick at it because the battles are interesting. They're match 3 and then followed by kind of terrain-based combat, almost like a Clash Royale type of thing. So it's fascinating. I'll keep picking away. Today, I'm actually going to dig into some RPG Maker games made by the creator, The Odie, whose real name is Kevin, and I wanted to have him on the show, and he respectfully declined, but I left an open invitation. He makes great YouTube videos and RPG Maker tutorials, so I wanted to shout him out, and I'm going to dig into his horror games a little bit more later on. And what's more, as me and Matt talked about, the other major game I've been playing is Sol Sesto, which is a cool roguelite where you're basically choosing percentages of like, are you going to get hurt? Are you going to get coins, or are you going to get health? And that's kind of it. But the art style is so unique, and the way that kind of game loop I described is visualized in a really fascinating way, and I think you'll like it. It's worth supporting the creator. Definitely worth checking out the art if you just want a visual sense of what we're talking about. And I think that's kind of all I have today. Oh, I dipped into Mario Baseball. I believe it's Super Sluggers for the GameCube, which is kind of like my nostalgia game. That's the first game I played on my own console, and I still love it to this day. And I'm constantly fascinated by the Steam Deck and the capabilities that it has. I know it's getting pretty old, but I love my Steam Deck and it as an emulation device, as a device for playing pretty much my entire catalog of games that I enjoy in handheld mode. It's kind of unparalleled, and I've messed around with some different handhelds. I've got modded Vita, modded PSP, modded 3DS, what have you. I've got my emulator handheld, my RG35XX SP, and the Steam Deck is definitely my all-around favorite. So I'm excited to keep digging into the different handhelds I enjoy. It's a good little hobby, but Steam Deck is still king for me. So if you have thoughts, maybe you're a ROG Ally X person, maybe you enjoy some of the emulator handhelds more, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at indiegamegarden@gmail.com. And if you've listened this far, it probably means you enjoy the show. So if you do that, please do tell one friend. You can also follow me on Instagram at indiegamegarden. On YouTube, you can give me a subscribe or a like on some of the podcast episodes that come out there. That's actually been the platform that I think I get most of my listeners on, so that's been interesting. That's Indie Game Garden. And then on Blue Sky, I'm at Darth Malks. That's like Darth Vader, but with my last name in there, Malks. And I'd love to hear from you on there too. Thanks again for listening. I won't keep you any longer. Go play Matt's games, and I'll see you next time. Bye.